Hey gang, welcome back. It's Sam and Alex here in the Learning Commons at very far ends of the Learning Commons, back for another installment of our mini skill shop series for this summer. And today we're going to be focusing on time management from a very particular perspective. We're going to be looking at ways that we can hack the learning brain in order to get more out of our time investment. And of course, along the way, our goal for you guys is just going to be for all of us to help each other become more effective and more efficient and more self-empowered learners so we can take more control of our own learning experience. And along the way, we're going to do our best to leverage what we know from cognitive science and learning sciences more generally, so that when we're done today, hopefully, you guys will be able to walk away with a skill or a strategy or some understanding that you can start to use not just in one course, but in all your courses and maybe even in what you do every day in life. So, along the way, there are going to be a couple of little opportunities for you guys to engage with the presentation, and you can do that through these reflections. And it's because it's a recorded session, you can go ahead and stop the recording, then go ahead and do the reflection in real time if you'd like. It's really easy to do that. You just download the Edge app, you locate the Summer Mini Skill Shop discussion threads. I'm sure you guys have already done more than once. Fill out the reflection form as you go and just hit submit, and you'll be able to get some edge points and maybe a little swag at some point during the summer. So if that makes sense to you guys, we're going to go ahead and get out of the gate, and I think Alex has control.
Yes, I do. I have control today because we have found out that Sam's time management isn't necessarily fully together when it comes to presentations within a 30-minute time frame. So we're going to see if I can do any better, but who knows, we'll see what happens. But I love time management, and I love making sure that we have effective time management. And there was even a study from the PIL on college students, because college students are always ready and available to do these studies all the time, about the factors, key factors when they're in college, and that the biggest one was stress. Students are super stressed, and it's completely understandable. I was super stressed when I was in school, and I can still sometimes be a little stressed. And when you think about stress, the coping mechanism that's going to come with it is procrastination. If you're stressed about wanting to start something, or if you have a project due and you're really nervous about it and you don't want to start it, you're going to procrastinate. But the issue is, if you start procrastinating, you're then pushing that off a little bit further, and it's going to be causing you then even more stress because you're procrastinating with it. So what we want to do is try to help you find ways to kind of push that procrastination aside so you can lower your stress with effective time management. Now, we're always going to be thinking about wanting to cram for a session, okay, I didn't have time to study for this test this week, and so I'm going to study it right the night before and maybe an hour before the exam, and I got this. Cramming isn't necessarily a bad thing at all. You're going to have that short-term memory kind of right in there. Think about it as like you're filling up a bathtub. You've got all of this short-term memory just filling up as you're cramming for this exam, but you have an issue. The stopper in your tub has a leak. So while you're filling up your tub, there's always going to be some of your short-term memory that's going to be leaking out of that. So when you go and take your exam, you can dump all of that short-term memory on it, and you probably will have a lot of information to go off of. But with that leaky stopper, you're not being able to move some of that short-term memory into your long-term memory. So if you have a cumulative exam at the end of the semester, think about this. The short-term memory that came out from the tub, that leak, it's going to be a lot harder to retrieve because it's not in your long-term memory, unlike all the long-term that you can just kind of pull from, and it's going to be a little easier. So we'll find ways to show how, to work your way into creating that long-term memory and be able to retrieve from it better. So today we kind of want to spend a little bit of time on, to be more aware of what you spend your time on, and that can be more of being metacognitive of what's going on, thinking about one's thinking. If you start to understand that, it's going to kind of help you be better at then recognizing what really the goal of time management is. So you need to really find that balance of the things that you need to do and you want to do. Man, I really, really, really want to go out and spend time with my friends today, but I know that I need to be working on an exam that's coming up or a project that's due. So we kind of want to work through that, and then how we can break down projects into smaller ones, and how we can effectively use a planner and prioritize and put things in to-do lists just to kind of keep this process going. Time management can be difficult, but we can do it. So first, we just kind of want to be aware of our goals. You've got long-term goal, you've got short-term goals, but you really want to think about what needs to be done in order to achieve them. So if you break down your like long-term or your really big goal into smaller goals, it's going to be a lot easier for you to be able to then achieve it. Because if you think of the big goal all at once, it can be a little overwhelming. Man, I got a lot to do. But if you break it into smaller tasks, you get that enjoyment of checking off each little one as you go through your goal. And it's my favorite thing to do, is to check off my list on my smaller goals. And so when you do that, it's going to be a lot easier to figure that out. And just to think about, you're going to have your present self and your future self. And when you think about your present self, you have this immediate consequence that's going on. You're going to be thinking about, I have this project due. I don't want to do it. I'm going to procrastinate. I'm nervous. I'm stressed. I'm just not going to worry about it. It's going to be done. I don't care. Go from there. But if you start to move towards more of your future self, you're going to be thinking of those short-term obstacles that you have in your present self that's going to cause you to stop. You're going to go, you know what? I can get past these, because then you're going to move further down the path to your goal. So an example of a type of goal is that I want to graduate from TCTC and I want to continue my education. Well, think of it as like a funnel. So you've got like a larger goal of you're going to have to take your necessary courses for your degree. Then you're going to break it down a little further into it. And in order to do that, you're going to need to take courses that are relevant and that they're going to be transferable to your major. Because if you start taking just random classes and they don't transfer over, it's not really going to help you that much. We're then going to move further down, and you're going to want to maintain your solid grades on assignments for these classes. But in order to maintain those solid grades, you're going to have to attend lectures and you're going to have to understand the material. And if you want to understand the material, you're going to want to study wisely. And you're going to start creating further down in this funnel with the studying and attending your lectures of a more daily, day-to-day basis of things that are happening to then kind of reach you then to that end goal of graduating from TCTC and either continuing your education or going into the workforce, whatever that goal may be.
Nice. So one of the things that you guys can do at this point is take a quick second and go ahead and pause and think a little bit about what your long-term goals might be and how you might start to break those down into smaller, more achievable goals that you can focus on along the way. So take a second to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's really great, because it's going to kind of go into, we don't have a face-to-face classroom right now with what's going on. So it's going to look a little different when you're in online learning, and it can be a little more scary, especially with time management. You're now really in control of everything that's going on. And so there's just kind of ideas on, when you start early and you work steadily, but starting early in this case, you really want to start the task as soon as possible. But when you're in a classroom, you might be given that sheet of paper, like, here's your project, it's in your hands. As soon as you walk out the door, you can go sit down and spend 15 minutes just kind of reviewing that project or that assignment. And it's going to start to then change, your brain's going to kind of change. It's going to go into project mode. So what's going to happen is it's already starting to think about and put things into like almost this file of, okay, here's the assignment that I got to be working on, and go from there. So then when you kind of move through and you come back to that assignment a few days later, you're just kind of retrieving that information a little bit versus having to start off right off the bat, because you've gone a few days without even thinking about it at all. This way it can kind of make it a little bit easier for you. And then when you want to work steadily with it, you got to think about moving it kind of a little bit each day. So if you have a project that's due and it's a big one, you don't want to wait until the last minute to do it. That's going to, again, cause stress, and it could potentially cause procrastination. And then you're going to have a bigger issue of not having something done whenever it's due. But if you work a little bit each day on what the project is, it's going to be a little less stressful for you. And that actually is what, when you work steadily, you're actually doing spaced practice, which I think is really, really cool. And a technique that you can use with space practice is the Pomodoro technique. And we actually touched base on this a little earlier on another skill shop, but it's really just trying to figure out the task that you choose to accomplish. And you want to set that little timer. And Som has one. I actually want to get one myself because I think it's going to be really cool. And when you set that timer for 25 minutes, you're going to be working on that task specifically for that time. When the timer goes off, you're going to go take a break. Short breaks at first are going to be really good because you're going to start to forget and then you're going to pull it back into it. And then when you keep going on, you're creating that spaced practice because you're then starting up that project again and you're having to then retrieve that information, because the most important part of this technique is the forgetting part. Because once you forget, you then have to work on retrieving that information every time you start back up on the project. And it's going to be the same thing where if you go into it, you're going to want to maybe interleave things into it. So think of maybe you have a chemistry class and you have a bio class you're taking at the same time. Start on chemistry, do your 25 minutes, take your break, then start on your bio, 25 minutes, take a break, and then go back to chem. Because what's happening is you're kind of changing things up and you're taking a longer time to forget what's going on. So you started with chemistry, you went to bio, you've now got a longer time to then retrieve what was going on with your chemistry. And I think that that's kind of really important to kind of help us start to push things into our long-term memory and to retrieve it from there. So when we think about that, think about, so you've got that big project and you started doing your technique of breaking it into smaller pieces, but we should maybe think about how we want to split those into smaller pieces and manageable tasks. So think about this. You have an instructor for all of your classes and they have this dump truck filled with rocks and they come to your house and they are each dumping that dump truck of rocks into your driveway. So now you're stuck in your driveway. You can't go anywhere until you move these rocks yourself. Congratulations, the instructors are not helping you. So what do you think you're going to want to start off with first? Well, you're going to want to start off with the little rocks because they're the easiest. You're going to be able to move them easy and it's not going to be much of an issue. Then you can start to work on the medium rocks. A little bit harder, but still manageable, moving them out of the way. Until you get to the really, really heavy rocks. You can't move them on your own. It's going to be really difficult. However, there are ways to move those heavy rocks. You can always break it into smaller rocks, easier for you to move at a time, or you can even, phone a friend. You've got friends that can help you, create a study buddy, you find people to kind of talk things through with and to go from there. And while you might need to be social distancing at this moment, 6 feet apart, we've still got Zoom, 40 minutes for free. I say take advantage of that too. Then you can really still be able to have that person with you to kind of even create, like a social aspect of it well, kind of have some fun while you're doing it. When you're by yourself, maybe not always as fun, but when you bring that buddy in, that can really help. And so if you think about it, whenever you're going back and with having those smaller chunks of time, it's going to be a lot easier for you to find 5 1-hour blocks versus 1 5-hour block. I don't even have 1 5-hour block where I can do one task at a time for my weeks right now. I don't have it, but I can find smaller blocks within the time and to go from there, because I love that Confucius said this, the man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones. And that's exactly what we did. We broke up that mountain into smaller pieces to move it. So you might be thinking, well, how am I going to break it down? This is just kind of nice for these questions right here, just to kind of give you a go-to set of questions to kind of help you strategize and start off when you think, okay, I got a big task. How am I going to break it down? Where, you need to think about what needs to be accomplished. When is the due date? Kind of prioritize. And maybe you can even group some of the tasks together if they fit. And I think this is always the smartest thing to think about. Whenever you estimate your time, you should probably double it. You should go up a little bit higher. Don't think too highly of yourself. If you think you're going to read a chapter in an hour, you are probably not going to read that chapter in an hour. So if you double that time, if anything, you're going to have a pleasant surprise if you end early and now you have that extra free time that you can maybe fit something else in that you didn't think that you would have. So always think about taking that more time, because if you end up not having enough time, you're then pushing back everything else that you had on your schedule, which then can cause you stress. And I really like it because I have a calendar. I'm a very visual person, so I write everything down and I have it in spots where it's going to help me, you know, organize how I've broken something down, and then I just go for it. You know, you got to take that initiative. So we can give you an example. This is, I think it's from an English class, correct, Sam?
Yeah, I think that's from English 101 or 102. It's one that you guys may be running into at this very moment.
So here, this activity is 23 to 2,800 words, and you have multiple tasks within this assignment that you're going to need to complete. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of show you an example of how a way that you can break down this big assignment that, you know, if it's assigned on Wednesday the 1st and it's due the 29th, you might think, wow, I've got a ton of time to do this. I'll just start it on the 25th. Give me a few days. I got it going. Maybe not. So here are ways that you can break it down. You're going to select your topic, do research. You're going to refine the topic, focus your research. You've got the summary. You've got citations. You've got a personal analysis, a summary of criticisms. You then want to finalize your in-text citations. You can then do a works cited page. You're then also going to have to revise, edit, and proofread, because the last thing you want to do is type up a paper last minute and not proofread. That can be embarrassing. And then you're going to want to type your final draft. So here's all of the ways that we've broken down this essay. And then here's how, you know, we can kind of put it on the calendar to show that you've got multiple things that you can complete in a certain time. So you've got your topic and background research. You've got, you know, then refining it a few days later. You're going to start to write a few days later. You know, you're giving yourself some time to kind of complete all of these smaller tasks. You don't feel as stressful. You know, you have a summary, you've got your citations, you've got your works cited page, you know, you've been able to proofread on the 24th and start to edit. So you have a few days to then write your final draft where it's, you know, it's done a few days actually before it's even due. So it's that causing, you know, it's going to allow you to not have as much stress because you like, look, you finished it on Monday. So if you think, oh, you know what, I want to change something, you still have time versus like, oh, shoot, you know, it's due in an hour and I still haven't finished, you know, proofreading and editing. Well, I'm not going to proofread and edit, and you're going to turn it in and it's just not going to look as beautiful as it could be. So thinking of this, I always want to write down whatever my to-do list is because I need it to visually be there. When I write it, if I just think about it in my brain and it's like, okay, you know what? I need to do this on Tuesday, this on Thursday, this on Sunday. I will forget it. I'll think like, oh, it's really important. I'll do it this time. But if I don't have it written down, I'm not going to get that. And we learn through multiple channels by seeing, hearing, and doing. You know, that tactile part of it where you write it down, it's actually just going to kind of create, it's going to allow you to remember better because you're making that more concrete. You know, I have a to-do list on my board, and if I write it down and I'm going to constantly see it, it's not going to go away. It's going to bother me all the time because it's on my to-do list and I need to do it. I'm going to remember it. Can't forget it because it's highlighted on my board. So that's just kind of a way that's also going to help you not put something off. It's going to be harder to because you're going to constantly see on your board. All I want to do is either erase it because I'm done or check it off because I'm done, you know, to feel that helpfulness there. Like, yes, I completed it, you know, accomplishment. So think about it this way. You can make 3 lists, and this can be really good because you're starting to organize a little better. So we've got the master list. This is where you're going to write down everything you have. You've got, you know, months in advance of things that are happening, like, hey, school starts in August. I'm putting down my start date, you know, or things that are happening just in general. Like I have an appointment on this day, you know, master list, everything is there. Then you're going to want to have a weekly project list. And this is what's going to be done during the week. So I have a Trello board and it's free if anybody else wants to use it as well. But I have my master list on one of my cards in a sense. And then I have my weekly project list. So every week I set up one and I put down what needs to be done that week. And I can kind of think about what's for my master list. It's kind of vague. You know, my weekly project list is a little more specific. And then I have my hit list, which is the high impact task. So where everything that needs to be done that day. So when I look at my weekly list and I go, all right, I need to be working on this, this, and this, I can create smaller projects from that big one into my daily tasks to figure out, okay, this is what needs to be done and to go from there. However, you really want to think about when you're creating these tasks on how to prioritize them. Because the last thing you want to do is say, you know what, I'm going to do laundry first, and I'm going to do my homework, and I'm going to let the dogs out. And you start to really need to think about, your first task might not be the most important task. And is this also going to go along with your schoolwork as well? So think about if you have a project that's due or an assignment, you need to say, when is that going to need to be completed? If it's sooner rather than later, you're going to want to raise that up on the priority list. And you're also going to want to think about, is this task depend on me being able to complete other tasks? So if I can't, do this skill shop until I'm done with my PowerPoint, well, my PowerPoint needs to go higher up on my priority list because I can't record if I don't have my PowerPoint done. So that's another way of prioritizing. And then how much time it's going to take. You're going to want to put things that are going to take longer higher up on your priority list. I don't want to put doing laundry at the top and make it high priority when it's going to take me 2 minutes to put it in the washer and set the timer kind of thing. So, doing that is going to kind of take the pressure off of you whenever you have that list of, it's prioritized in the right way versus you see all the way at the bottom, oh shoot, I had a paper that I needed to write and you didn't notice it because you didn't prioritize right. So the way you also want to make your list, because great, you've now prioritized, you put things in, but you really want to make sure that you do it with SAS, which I love because it's going to be, are you strategic? Is it actionable? And is it specific? So if you don't have a not so important task and you start to stress out about it, you're probably going to want to move that up to a higher priority. So the example of cleaning your room, I have to clean the Airbnb soon because we'll be moving into our new house, and that's going to start to stress me out a little bit. So maybe I need to move up on my priority list a little more. And when it's actionable, you don't want it to be very vague, like save the animals or, write my project. You're going to want to make it a little more specific on, I'm going to write the cover letter for this internship or go from there, because that's going to help you figure out, does it need to be maybe taken down a little bit or, smaller tasks or, how are you really going to be able to do this? And then have it be specific. So again, this is going to be, you don't want to be vague. You want to write 2 paragraphs or write a type of reference list versus just kind of not really knowing what I'm going to do. Because if you're too vague, you don't really know how you're going to be actionable with it. And it's not maybe necessarily going to be fully strategic. So we actually think this is a great example. This is a to-do list written by Johnny Cash. I can't believe it sold for over $6,000. That's amazing to me. But he, as you can see from his list, not smoke, kiss June, not kiss anyone else, cough, pee, eat, not eat too much. During quarantine, maybe you are eating a little too much. Worry, go see mama, practice piano, not write notes. Oh, he would not be my friend. I love writing notes. So you want to think to yourself, is this strategic? Is it actionable? Is it specific? I'd say more with the actionable and specific, probably not super strategic, but whatever was going through his brain, see how it is. But if he's not much into writing notes, probably won't have another strategic one written down for him.
Well, so speaking of strategic, this might be a strategic place to pause one more time and to think a little bit about how we're organizing our time throughout a week. Because, ultimately only 168 hours in a week, gang. So we got to think about all the other stuff that I got to get done. Let's total up everything we have to do outside of our academic world and subtract that from that 168. And whatever we have left is what we have to devote to our studying and learning time. So this might be a useful exercise to take on.
Yes, and this is actually could be a really good example of how your time gets eaten up really, really quickly and you don't even realize it. So this is where you pull out that 5th grade planner that you haven't been using because your teacher had all the knowledge and had everything set up on the board for you. You're probably going to want to start using that now, but it's only going to be as effective as you make it. So, you can use Google Calendar, you can use a physical planner, you can put things on Trello, however you need to do it, as long as you're being effective and you're managing it right, this could be a really good tool for you. So here's an example. While you might not be able to write down when your classes meet specifically right now with them online, you can still actually set up, if it's more of an asynchronous class, hey, maybe you want to still keep it that kind of normal schedule where you have a Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9 a.m. Put that down on the calendar. That can work for you, but you need to write down all your courses when you want to be using them to actually go through the coursework. And what's nice is that the syllabus is going to give you a schedule for all of your assignments, quizzes, and exams. So all of that has now gone on the board. We're starting to fill it up a little bit, and we've only just started with schoolwork. You're then going to want to think about, do you have a job right now? Or, is it a full-time job? Is it a part-time job? You're going to want to put that on the schedule as soon as you know when those days and times are. So now we're filling up a little more, and we've now just only added the job. Now we have appointments. So do you have a doctor's visit? Do you have a meeting for something? If you have a bunch of Zoom calls that start to happen now because, you're having to stay at home, those can actually start to take up some time as well, and to go from there. Or even if you're not able to attend church, you can still be watching it. You're going to still want to put that on the calendar, because that's still time that you need to consider when going through of when you can then actually do work for studying and coursework like that. And then finally, fun events. As long as you stay 6 feet apart, you can almost do practically anything at this moment. But, you still want to be able to have that time of fun, social experiences, because this is a time that you kind of still need to have that. And so you want to kind of bump that into your calendar a little bit as well. And then it's going to kind of give you this sticker shock. You're going to see like, oh my gosh, look how much is already filled up on my calendar. This is crazy. But you probably need that, because it's going to give you that, like, it's overwhelming, but you're going to remember that it's manageable, that you can do this. It's going to be a little hard, but you just got to know how to effectively use your time. So when do you have time to study on this calendar? Well, what you can do is you can do those small breaks. Remember, we don't have a ton of time on certain days to put in your study habits, but you can see there's multiple different areas where you can take those breaks and put them in for covering, your study time that you want to be doing that. Now, the other thing that we need to consider are our effectiveness zones. So I am productive the most very, very early in the morning. My son already wakes me up at like 5:30 because he's a toddler, and that's what they apparently do. And so that's when I get up and I am productive. That's when I kind of get things done around the house and I go for it. And then you need to think about whenever you have your creative and thinking time, because you really want to protect that. And my time is kind of like right before lunch. I don't know why, but that's just when it is. All my great and sometimes terrible ideas happen at that time. And so I always know to protect that time. I need that. And then you're going to have some kind of like dead time where you're like, I just don't have the energy to do this kind of thing. Some people have it like at 2 o'clock. That's why I get some coffee or 2 o'clock break sort of thing. Mine's in the evening. As soon as I put Remy to bed, I'm exhausted. I don't really want to be putting my mind to anything else. So this is my time. Maybe I'll throw a load of laundry in, or I'll just do some dishes or something that's pretty chill, because that's when I know what's going on. And then if anything, you should sleep on it. And Sam, I think you should actually talk about this a little bit, because I think you just do such a good job whenever you want to sleep on it when you're in doubt.
That's because I'm so good at sleeping on things. But essentially, I think the lesson here, guys, is to understand that our brains do kind of a funky thing when we go to sleep. They don't turn off. They keep operating. And they kind of move from that kind of digital recorder that we have going on during the day to something that looks more like a curator at night. So during the nighttime, we're consolidating them. We're putting it away and moving it from that short-term to long-term memory. So when I really want to retain something for the next day, if I spend some time with it right before I go to sleep, it makes it much more likely for my brain to think of that as being important and to move it more effectively into long-term memory. So the next morning when I get up, it's there, it's more available to me, and it even feels a little bit more organized and specific or available in that sense. So that's kind of, I think, what we're gesturing at there.
Yes. And that's perfect, because sometimes we start to think about these common time wasters that we have, which I think can be very common, and they can start to really take hold. I went on YouTube to watch one video, and somehow I went on this rabbit trail, and I don't even know how I ended up, some type of Korean show was on, and I was watching that, and I don't even speak Korean, so that didn't really help me at all. but it was a big time waster for me and going on from there. And so, Sam, take it away.
Well, I mean, I think you're right. We all contend with all kinds of time wasters all the time. And it's not as if they're going to disappear. They're not going to go away from us. So we need to figure out what we're going to do when we run into them. So one of the things we might do, we might take a little pause break here and spend a few minutes thinking about what are the top 5 ways that I tend to engage in wasting time. We all have our specialties, right? But if we start to list those out and then start to figure out the ways that we are going to work our way around those obstacles or get past those struggle points, have defined strategies for getting by them, research will show that we get much more effective at doing that when we have those intentions to implement a particular strategy. So a good moment to take a second to reflect on that particular part of this too.
Yes, exactly. And this actually, I think it's really important that we sometimes think about, I plan on studying at this time on, Saturday at 7 p.m. But you also suddenly realize that there's this World of Warcraft competition going on at the same time. And now you got to start to think about, well, if I decide to do the competition instead, then what's going to happen? Do you have another time that you can move your studying to? Or if you don't, what are the consequences going to be if you don't have that study time at that moment? What are you going to be losing? And it could be the same thing with chess. You think you've got a few moves ahead, but something can kind of always come in and happen. So you kind of need to anticipate and understand that there's going to be some obstacles that are going to come into play that you don't necessarily plan. You can have an 8 to 5 idea of like, here's exactly what I'm going to be doing, but something could happen and it's going to put, your pawn's going to get moved and then you're pretty much getting done for because your king's going to get taken kind of thing. So, just kind of keep that in mind that you can have a plan, but also know that that plan can kind of get changed up a little bit from time to time. And so here, this is just kind of the recap of, wanting to be aware, what motivates you and what your goals are, and to start early, to work steadily. You want to have that spaced practice and that interleaving, and to break those tasks, big tasks into smaller ones. You always want to write things down. I love doing that, put that into concrete, and just to be able to prioritize your tasks and to use that in the weekly planner. But to be able to utilize that weekly planner, efficiently and effectively to go from there. And then we've pretty much touched base on all of these learning strategies, maybe except kind of the bottom one a little bit with just kind of the partner, and having that motivated and that social time. But this is important because you kind of want to ask yourself, well, why does this stuff work? However, when you understand it, when you understand the mechanism, you're then going to have a higher chance of wanting, of buying into it. At first, I didn't really understand about interleaving. And then when I started to do it and I really understood why it was helping me, now I love doing that. And it's been really helpful whenever I was taking classes before.
So brilliant, guys. So as we kind of come to the final moment here of our time management and the Learning Brain Skill Shop, one of the things you might want to think about is which one of these different strategies, of all the many that Alex just laid out for us, can I start to implement first? What's something I can put on the table right now and start to utilize? And maybe why that thing? Why does that thing appeal to us? Why might it be actionable for us right now? And possibly what kinds of points of struggle I might run into, what might militate against me putting that into practice so that I can figure out a way to get around that point of struggle and keep moving forward. So just a little something to be thinking about as we move on.
Yeah, and just to kind of end, even though we're not necessarily all on campus together, we do want to let you know that there is a lot of student support and engagement that we have offered for you. And so if you just kind of want to take a screenshot of this, of the different areas that, you can reach out to, and we're here for you. So just don't think that since you're not on campus that you don't have this, readily available to you. And so if you need anything, please fill out the comments and questions form from the link on the Edge app, and just to kind of go from there of, what can we help you with to kind of walk through, this new environment with you together.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Alex. And we really appreciate everybody kind of coming in with us today. And just as Alex says, don't hesitate to reach out if we can help in any way. See you guys next time.